Is there like a specific recommendation, like, hey, I started my business today, should I probably shouldn't start taking a profit day one, right? Or like, how early does that start?
I'd start day one, and
Really?
even if it's 1%, if your business can run on $100, then it can run on $99. This system leverages that behavior, and that's what I say with the profit account. You're moving it to the side. We have an account just for the owner's pay. We have an account for the operating expenses.
Hey everyone, we are here with Craig Dacy. Craig is a profit first professional. He's a financial coach and a profit advisor in general. Thanks for being here with me.
Hey Tyler, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So yeah, let's get right into it. Could you explain first, what is a profit first professional? What's the ideology behind that?
Yeah, as a profit coach, I teach business owners how to better manage their finances. I'm a firm believer that business finance is overly complicated, and unfortunately business owners sometimes feel like they need an accounting degree to even manage the day-to-day finances in their business, and it genuinely shouldn't be that difficult. And so that's really the basis behind it, is helping people take the complexities of business finance and make it so simple that it's really just integrating into your day-to-day life in business.
Cool. And so the profit first piece of it, that comes from a book, right? And so what's like the main ideology behind, I mean, it's pretty easy to guess in the name what it's about, but could you just kind of go over that book and what it teaches?
You bet. Yeah. Profit First is a book by Mike Michalowicz. And so I have trained with their team and become certified in that. And that's what I coach my clients through, is implementing this system. And really, you're right. The title says Profit First. And that's kind of this idea of prioritizing profit. Too often we look at our spreadsheets, right? Our accounting spreadsheets, and you look at a P&L, a profit and loss, and at the bottom is the bottom line. It's the profit that's down there at the bottom. And so you might finish the year and look at that number and go, hey, great, I ended the year with $10,000 in profit. That's awesome. And then you pick up your phone and you look at your bank account and you're going, where is that $10,000 that I earned? What happened to it? And the truth is you spent it, because that's what they call just an accounting profit, but it got spent on who knows what. Maybe some of it got spent on personal expenses, business expenses. So with Profit First, the idea is let's take profit out first before anything else and into a separate physical bank account. If you make $100, take $5 and stick it over into this account and run the business on the rest. Flipping over that whole idea that standard accounting is sales minus expenses equals profit. We're now doing sales minus profit equals expenses.
Interesting. And so, I mean, I love that piece what you said about, 10,000 profit, great. Like, where is it?
Yes.
We always joke in our two businesses that we've started so far, we always look at our forecast and we're like, oh, we could be making this much money that, next month or whatever. But then we always say it's monopoly money. My co-founder's wife actually started that. She was like, well, that's cool to hear, but I mean, is it in our bank account or is it just monopoly money? It's just fake money, right?
That's exactly right. And it's just human nature. It's our behavior. What we prioritize first happens. And, the number one thing thrown away in restaurants at the end of the night is vegetables. And that's because that's typically when you're served your plate, you're eating the meat, you're eating the potatoes. And if you have time, if you're still hungry, you'll eat the vegetables. But, if you have a health scare, you don't walk out of the hospital and say, from this moment forward, I'm putting my health last. I'm putting it first. It's first thing in the morning, I'm going to do this. That's you saying this is a priority. And so we want profit to be a priority in a business.
Totally. And then so kind of a clarifying question on this. So, profit first, like that sounds awesome. It sounds great to be getting paid for owning a business. Now, are there any exceptions to that? Because obviously there are founders that their mentality, like you said, priorities, like their mentality is growth before anything. Mm-hmm. And so then maybe for them, it's like, well, I don't want to be taking profit first. Like I'll just dump everything into the business. If there's something left over, great. But really, I want to be growing before anything.
Yeah, absolutely. This idea of funneling everything back into the business, which is great. And I know there's a lot of startups and businesses who maybe have investors who are the expectation is you can't be profitable yet. We don't want you to be. We want you to funnel it back in. But what we're talking here is about behavior. And so sometimes it's just teaching our behavior to be, we're going to prioritize profit. Now, if in the early days you ultimately need to use a lot of that profit to funnel back in to cover your costs as you're growing, or again, if you have some VCs who are investing in the business, maybe you can't necessarily hold that as profitability, but at least you're training yourself and your business to set it aside. When we wait, we always say, you know, one day I want to be profitable, but right now we need to invest everything back in. But the problem is if you can't manage the money, if you're not prioritizing it at $10,000 a year, it's going to be harder to do at $100,000. It's going to be harder to do at $1 million a year. The problem, it just gets harder and harder to suddenly decide now we're going to become profitable. There's something, and Mike talks about it in the book, it's called Parkinson's Law, that when we have more of a resource, we consume more. When we have less, we consume less. And so
true.
It's exactly right. It's why it takes us 2 weeks to do an assignment, or overnight if you decide to wait till the last minute to do it. So that's the idea too, is the more money we have, we're just going to spend more. And so there's not necessarily a revenue line that's like, okay, I'm making enough now, I can be profitable. We're naturally just going to start spending more. We're going to have to hire. That's expensive. And so starting sooner is the best way to go.
And then, so is there like a specific recommendation? Like, hey, I started my business today. Should I probably shouldn't start taking a profit day one, right? Or like, how early does that start?
I'd start day one. And even if it's 1%, you know, if your business can run on $100, then it can run on $99. And if it can't, there's a bigger problem than profitability. So that's what I would start it on day one and really prioritize that. And then in the book, it's all about separating into those accounts. And so it even goes further than that into organizing your money into multiple bank accounts. So as business owners, we're not looking at profit and loss statements or cash flow statements. What we're looking at, again, is our phone. If you're making a money decision, I'm sure you're the same way, Tyler. When you guys are deciding something, it's not, those forecasts are great, but before you make a purchase or before you do anything, you're probably looking, can we afford to make this purchase? Can we afford to take a paycheck?
It's actually in the account.
You're looking at your account. And so this system leverages that behavior, and that's what I say with the profit account. You're moving it to the side. We have an account just for the owner's pay. We have an account for the operating expenses and one for the taxes, so that when you're looking, you don't see $10,000 in the bank. You see $3,000 in operating expenses, and you see $2,000 in owner's pay. And that's going to give you this idea of how much do I really have to spend without robbing my tax money or without robbing your own salary, which is what most business owners are doing. They get to the end of the month and say, can't pay myself this month, or can't pay myself exactly what I want to pay, maybe next month. Organizing it that way really, really helps.
Wow, interesting. And I mean, there are times where businesses struggle, right? So is it kind of like 401k, like do not touch that owner's account? Or like, is that sacred, or is there more flexibility in like, okay, this month was rough for us, like we really truly can't take that profit?
Great question. Yeah. So the profit, you're right, is like a 401k. The idea is it's taken off the top. We really want to put a wall there that says almost like a do not break, or break in case of emergency, right? Only in an emergency situation. Typically what happens is, and this is why I love the system too, is if you're going to pay let's say payroll is due the next morning, and you look at your operating expenses and you're going, oh, there's not enough in there to cover payroll. What do I do? Well, that's your business raising a red flag saying you're spending too much in operating expenses. The thing is, this red flag was flying all along. It's just maybe it was masked because you had all the cash lumped together. And so you were robbing from those other categories anyway. It's just you didn't have the clarity or the opportunity to see it. So yes, you're right. If that red flag's flying, that gives us the opportunity to stop and say, okay, how do we plug this hole? What do we need to do? And if you ultimately need to pull from owner's pay, which is not ideal, at least you're choosing or being proactive instead of reactive, just not taking a paycheck and not knowing exactly why. Yeah,
I love that. And I think it depends on the size of the business, but at least for us, like we've never had, a dedicated accountant or even like a CFO as part of our business. So another reason why I like this methodology, ideology, is because it does, I feel like it makes us better accountants almost. Like, if it is one lump sum, you have to be really good at like knowing each and every transaction, right? Your QuickBooks should be, completely up to date. Everything's categorized. And like, then maybe you can know what makes up this lump sum, but most founders are not doing that to that extent. And so I like that it even makes accounting easier for founders because like, okay, all I have to look at is literally just look at the number on this account.
Exactly right. Yeah. That's the goal, is it makes it easier. And also to your point, I mean, your books are not going to get reconciled till, let's say, we are in November. you won't know exactly what happened financially in October for probably another week or two until all the payments have gone through and everything's been reconciled. And at that point, you can look down and go, how did I do? Oh, yeah, we overspent. We need to do better this month. And it's just too late to solve that problem. It's not in the moment anymore. It's, again, being reactive. How did we do? Did we miss the mark?
Right.
Whoops. Maybe we'll do better this month. Probably not. But versus actually having the account in front of you when you're going to make the decision in that moment, we're going to overspend. What do we do?
Yeah. Wow. I love it. I love this. Yeah. I mean, I'm sold already. Like, that's really cool. So I guess you as a financial coach, so what is, it's like the main issue you work with entrepreneurs? Like what do you usually help people? Is it this profit first mentality? You know, what is like your main job with founders or entrepreneurs?
Yeah, great question. I call myself, and my clients call me their CPO, their Chief Profit Officer, and I'm there to help prioritize profitability for them. And so, yes, you're right, helping unroll this system, helping them figure out that, you know, all these accounts are based on percentages. So it's, if, again, $100 comes in, what percentage needs to go to that profit account? What percentage needs to go to owner's pay, operating expenses, and taxes? So helping them figure out what percentage they should start with, and then what is their ideal percentage for the business so that it grows in a healthy way. Once we have that and the system's moving, then I'm there to look at anything that affects profitability, which, as you know, is a lot of different things. So whether it's margins or packaging or pricing or sometimes marketing, what is that? What's affecting that, and how can we help get those percentages maybe from an 85% operating expense down to like a 60 or a 50% operating expense?
Gotcha. And I think you briefly mentioned a quiz, and we can talk about that more about, you know, what that's actually telling us. But is there kind of any catch-all advice of like, hey, you should, you know, set aside this percentage for owner's pay, this is set aside for like marketing? You know, are there pretty hard and fast rules in this system?
So there's some, but it's based on the size of the business. And so let's say for a business that's less than $250,000 a year, the goal would be for them to set aside 5% in profit and about 50% going home to them as their salary and 30% going to operating expenses. And that leaves about 15% for taxes. But as you grow, there's two things that we like to see shift. We want to see profit is what you get paid for working on the business, and owner's pay is your salary for working in the business, the day-to-day work that you have to do early on. But as you grow, we want you working more on the business and less in it. So we want to start shifting more toward profit. And then we also need to increase your operating expenses because you're going to have to hire, and that's the most expensive thing on your profit loss statement is typically payroll. So we want to make sure funds are allocated to that. But as you were saying about the quiz, that's why I have that quiz. It's to tell you exactly what percentage your business should be doing. And so on my website, it's quiz.craigdacy.com. If you go there, it's going to tell you exactly, you're going to punch in, I think, 7 or 8 questions, answer those, and it's going to give you a report that'll say, for your industry, for your size business, here's the percentages that you should be putting toward profit, toward owner's pay, towards operating expenses.
Nice. I love it. Now, this is kind of a random question, and maybe it's a selfish question.
Fire away.
But for me, opening business bank accounts is an absolute nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I should throw my bank under the bus, but we want to move banks. And so have you run into that? Like, is that a real concern for entrepreneurs? Like, hey, I don't want to deal with that many accounts.
Yeah, it's the headache of creating new accounts. You're right. For some reason, a lot of banks want to make you sign your life away just to open additional accounts. It's a headache. And there's also the added headache of changing over, you know, where money's deposited or changing over where money is going out of, because truthfully, out of those accounts, there's 5 that we recommend. I already outlined 4 of them with profit, owner's pay, taxes, and operating expenses. But the 5th one is income. And that's where all deposits go. It's almost like the serving tray. So as you're getting paid throughout the month, it's just going into that account, and then you can drip it down to those other accounts. So yeah, that's, if you're using Stripe, if you're using PayPal, however you're receiving money, it all needs to go to that income account. And then everything you're spending is coming out of that operating expense account, so you're changing everything over to there. So to answer your question, it's a upfront headache, but it's going to save you so much time and effort and energy in the long run. And so if you can overcome that hurdle of, okay, we might need to change banks, or we might need to go in and spend a couple hours signing paperwork and changing over these direct deposits to make sure they're in the right account. Once you overcome that, it's going to be smooth sailing, and you're going to be so glad you did.
Yeah. Wow, I love it. Cool. That's perfect. And then another random question, but have you ever come into a business and they're taking too much profit and you say, hey, let's dial that down. You need a little bit more on your operating expenses.
The thing is, if you're taking more profit, but what we want to look at, and that's the beauty of business, is every business is different. And so just because maybe we might recommend 30% or 50% for operating expenses, this industry might be somebody who doesn't have an office space. They work from home. They have very minimal overhead. They don't have costs of goods. And so you're right. We might say, you know what? You should take a little extra profit. So I have yet to find someone who's too profitable. Typically when we see it, or if I do see it, it's that story we were just talking about at the beginning of the podcast, which is we see it on their profit and loss statement, but it's not in their bank account. And so they're not as profitable as we might think they really are. It's that monopoly money.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's not. Well, then I guess one of my last questions, specific questions, is what is like the biggest hurdle you have to overcome when you're trying to pitch this system to people? What's like the main concern that people have?
Change is hard. That's the big one. This is a brand new, different way of thinking about finances. It's this idea that I have to manage, just like you were saying, I have to manage 5 accounts. It sounds overwhelming. It sounds like it's more work than it really is. In fact, it makes it infinitely easier to have extra accounts. But just the idea of I have to change what I'm doing. I have to change everything. Sometimes the fear of, whoa, I'm at 80% operating expenses. How am I supposed to get it down to 40%? That seems just impossible. That's typically is the biggest barrier. But I'm a firm believer that change is supposed to be hard, and if it's a little scary, and if you feel some growing pains, that typically means you're on the right track. Yeah,
cool. I love it. One question that came up is how long has this system been around? Like, how long has it been around, I guess?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact year, but it was probably 2008, 2010 range is when the book came out. Okay. And there's thousands of businesses all over the world who are using it now. It's international. The book's been written in multiple languages. But yeah, and it works for every size business. So from $10 a year to 10 million, 50 million, it works.
Perfect. I love it. Well, cool. Yeah, like I said, those were kind of my last questions to wrap it up. Do you have any other advice or tips or tricks that you want to give the audience?
Yeah, a couple. As I thought of a question or something to address when you're asking about the bank accounts. Yeah. I encourage looking for a place that has free business checking accounts when you're doing this, just because it can add up with the fees on each account, or if they require minimum balances, it just becomes a headache. So credit unions are a great option, or online banks, but find somebody who will support it in a free way, because you can always add more accounts down the road. Just like you were talking about, maybe we want to add a payroll account, or we want to add a marketing account, or if you really want to get more granular, to have that flexibility and freedom just out the gate is really ideal.
Cool. And then are there any banks that you love that are specifically like the best that you've worked with?
Yeah. So again, credit unions, and those are typically local to where people are, but they almost always have free business checking accounts. There is an online one called Relay Financial, who I personally used for a little while. And as of this recording, they offer free business checking accounts, but it's purely online. So those are great options to look at. But again, I would say see what credit unions are in your area and start there.
Perfect. Love it. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Craig. This has been fantastic. I plan on implementing this system pretty quick. So yeah, the best way, kind of call to action to get in contact or get involved with Craig is to go to that website, quiz.craigdacy.com, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So yeah, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, and if anyone needs help as well, you can just go to craigdacy.com. There's other resources, or you can reach out to me there as well. But one action step is go open at least one account, nickname it Profit. Put 1% there starting today, and congrats, you're officially profitable.
Love it. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tyler.